Hello, listeners. This is Nandini Mehta, and you're listening to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast, where we bring you candid, thought provoking conversations with top HR leaders and experts. And here's your host, Pulkit Joshi.
Today, we have the privilege of hosting Ms. Nandini Mehta. Nandini Mehta is a seasoned HR professional with over 26 years of diverse experience. Starting in education and transitioning to sales and operations, Nandini has worked with renowned organizations like Will's Lifestyle, Trent India Limited, and Antal Exports. She later excelled in learning and development, managing training operations for Retail Academy India Limited and Food Express stores. Rising through the ranks, she led the training function for Max Retail and Lifestyle International and eventually served as head HR for these organizations. Currently, Nandini serves as the CHRO for Metro Brands Limited, a proud XLRI Jamshedpur alumni and CFI certified executive coach. Nandini is recognized for her achievements and was honored as the Women Achiever of the Year 2016-17 and top 100 HR professionals in 2017-18. With a passion for aligning people's strategies with business goals, Nandini is dedicated to fostering employee engagement and productivity. We are excited to delve into her wealth of experience and insights today. Nandini, thanks for taking out time to speak with us today and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Thank you, Pulkit. My pleasure.
Great. So let's get started with an icebreaker question, Nandini. Uh, what is the most challenging HR problem you've encountered and how did you overcome it?
I keep telling everyone that when it comes to HR, normally we encounter a lot of issues and problems. And I'll give you the reason why I say so. Typically, most organizations are more focused on the business. So, conversations, meetings, reviews are more around achieving the numbers, ensuring that we support the business, and less about people. And hence, most of the time, an HR leader definitely finds it very difficult to get the management's alignment to what we want to drive with respect to an HR agenda. Having said that, I think I've been very lucky to work with organizations that have always believed in people and looked at how do we, work with HR to enhance the employee experience. My biggest challenge, I think, has been taking over the role of HR in my earlier organization at Landmark and also taking over the CHRO role at Metro Brands. But since I've been asked to give one big challenge, I'd like to take, what I've done at Metro Brands. So I joined here about 2.5 years ago as the CHRO. And, when I joined here, HR was being handled by different departments. So there was one part
Okay.
of HR being handled by, marketing, one part of HR being handled by a group of people who had formed a committee, one part of HR being handled by the business. It was really difficult for me to put everything together. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges I have encountered. And since there was no formal HR department per se, I had to put the entire department together. Getting approvals to hire people was, again, a challenge. Right from so we work on a commission model for the front end. So right from revamping the commission model to ensuring that we are a compliant organization to making sure that we were just getting listed. So to make sure that the listing goes well, ensuring putting an ESOP program together. I think every piece of the journey has been challenging, and I think how I overcame it, of course, was to lay down what are the various things that I need to do and presenting it to my, MD and CEO to get their sign off on what exactly has to be done. So I think the last 2.5 years here has been a journey of putting the basics in place, is what I can say. And now is the time for me to start looking at how can I, uh, you know, do more And the do more is something that I've done a lot in Landmark Group. So just briefly talk about it if that's fine with you, Pulkit.
Absolutely. Please.
So I think in Landmark, my biggest challenge was I took up the role of HR when we had three very seasoned HR professionals who had joined the organization and failed to deliver on the role. And why this was a big challenge for me was because I did not come from an HR background. So, as you read my introduction, I came from an education background, and then I was into retail operations and then training. And I was not I did not even have a qualification in HR. So I think that was the biggest challenge that I took over. And when I took over that role, it was very similar to what I encountered in Metro here, uh, but s- but different in the sense that we had multiple regions. Every region was doing their own piece of HR in the way they thought was right. There were senior regional HR managers who were aligned to the business heads, the regional heads as we call them. So getting them aligned to me, putting the entire HR framework together for the organization, I think itself was a huge task for me. I can go on and on about it, but I know we are short of time. But I think uh, in a span of 1.5 years, I was able to turn around the table for HR in Max as I did in Metro Brands. And in one of my later questions, I'm also going to answer how I managed to do that.
Great. Thank you for walking us through that. Let's now talk about other aspects of how your leadership journey in HR as well as other functions has been, right? Please share a personal reflection on your growth journey as an HR leader. I know there are a lot of nuances to other functions as well, but we'll stick to your HR leadership journey. And please highlight any key lessons learned, and that's the first part of the question. And second, the impact it has had on your approach to leadership.
So, what I have realized in my journey as an HR leader is that whichever function you are in, it becomes very, very important to understand the organization and understand the business you are in. And why I say what I say is, for example, I would have done 100 things in my earlier organization, but my current organization may not be coming with the same philosophy and the same way of driving things with respect to a people agenda. And if I'm going to just say, oh, I did it there and it's going to work here, it's not going to work here. So I think as an HR leader, it becomes very, very important for us to understand the organization, understand where the organization is heading and what exactly they need so that we're able to offer customized solutions. So I think that's been my biggest learning in my entire career as an HR leader. Uh, what has really driven me, I would say, has been my passion, my perseverance, and my proactiveness. So I call it the three
Yes.
P's of my success.
Great.
And I always believed that if I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, I will not be able to deliver. If I don't persevere, I will not be able to execute something that I've put together to the last mile. So perseverance is very, very important. And if I'm not proactive, I will not be able to identify issues that are there and provide the right solutions. So I think these three things have become very, very, at least to me in my journey, have been very, very critical in my success. And through the journey of close to about, I would say, 18 years in HR per se, I think some of my key takeaways have been that I need to be very solution focused. It's very easy for us to go with a problem to the management, but important is can we also take a solution along with us,
Yeah.
right? And maybe not one, maybe multiple solutions. So solution focus is very, very critical, and that's helped me a lot. Understanding the business challenges and providing the solutions. So not just going with the problem and providing multiple solutions, but important to understand what that challenge is, right? So I'll give you a very simple example where kind of took over the role of HR in my earlier organization, one of the biggest things I realized is a disparity in the salaries of people in the front end. So what I mean by that is there would be a team member earning more than the team leader because the
Okay.
team member has been in the organization for a long time. And then we used to talk about attrition being very high. It is obviously going to be high when there is a disparity in compensations, right? So I understood this critical challenge and I worked around it to ensure we bring in parity. So that could mean transferring certain people from one store to another. It could be certain corrections in salaries to be done, right? So I'm just giving you one very simple example.
Yeah.
A second example that I could give is, we used to people used to leave, for 500 rupees increase to another organization in the front end. And one of the things that we put together was a complete succession plan, as we used to call it then, a career passport for all our front end employees. And we said 70% of hiring has to be done internally. We should not be hiring people from outside. And this was more to provide career paths to people. We can promise them a career if they continue staying with us and working with us. And we actually did that. So I think that's a huge success story that I can talk about in my career there. Of course, we've done similar work in Metro as well. But again, here the organization is very different. So what we did here was also quite different. Yeah, but just giving you an example on
Sure.
understanding the business challenge and addressing it. I think the other important thing for any leader for that matter is, see, one can be very good in strategizing. कि हम ये कर लेंगे, we should do this, we should do that from a 4-year perspective, 5-year perspective, 1-year perspective, whatever. But it is also important for a leader to be able to see the last mile delivery of that strategy. If
Hmm.
I'm not able to envision the last mile delivery and be very clear about how I am going to execute the strategy, I am going to fail. So I think as a leader, it's very important to uh, put the strategy in place and be very sure of what is the end result or end outcome that we are looking at and how do we go about getting that outcome. So I think that's very important. If we want the buy-in of the business, of the management, it's critical to have data and logic in whatever you do. If there is no data, no logic, business is not going to buy in because, like I just mentioned initially, business is all about numbers. So they're more focused on numbers. So when you are talking something, it has to be talking around data and logic, right? So I think that
Yeah.
that's very critical. Stakeholder buy-in, I've spoken a bit about it, but I think this is one of the most critical. So whenever I have done something, I have always first discussed it with the business, checked with them about what they think with the initiatives that we are driving, take their inputs on how they can help us. There have been projects where we have involved the business to work closely with us so that we can then execute it so that the buy-in is very high. So I think this is very critical, stakeholder buy-in and uh, you know their take off on whatever we do. And last but not the least, especially for HR, how do we balance between being a support function and a business function?
Hmm.
Most of the time there's a very thin line.
Yeah.
And if I start being, I'm here to help you, I'm here to help you, we'll end up being just that. But it's also important to say, boss, listen, I understand your business and this is the value add I can do for you in your business. So I think that also becomes very critical. And when you do that, you are able to put your foot down and say, listen, I bring in value and this is how I bring in that value. So I think it's very important to have a balance between the two, and that comes with you being able to understand the business and how it really works. So I think these have been my learnings and my personal reflections in my journey as an HR professional. And I think that's what has made me what I am today. I don't want to say whether I'm successful or not, but whatever I am today, I think these are the things that have helped me.
Awesome reflections there, Nandini. Thank you for sharing those insights. I love the framework as to how you sort of articulated it all. I'm sure that would have helped a lot of people who are in their growth ladder onto becoming a chief HR officer.
Thank you,
Let's
Pulkit.
switch gears. You're welcome. Let's switch gears now and let's talk about one aspect which you actually touched upon at a very broad level when you spoke of, how can HR become more strategic? How can they get a seat at the table, right? Because business is all about numbers. And I'm talking about how can there be absolute 100% alignment between HR as a function and what the business demands, right? Um, so I mean, let's over the course of next 4 or 5 questions, um, let's get into details of how this happens. How should one approach these kind of situations? What it takes, basically the A to Z. I think we'll try and see how much justice we can do in limited time with these 4 or 5 questions. But let's start with my first question on HR business alignment, and this is how can HR leaders ensure that their initiatives are in sync with the organization's strategic direction?
So I think most organizations, I would say rather all organizations, always do a session towards the end of the year for the next year to reflect back on what went right, what didn't go well, and what is the plan for the next year.
Yeah,
And I think HR plays a very critical role in this entire, uh, you know, strategy intervention, as we would call it. And during this during this entire intervention, it's not just about HR, it's about every department putting together what is it that they would bring to the plate with respect to the direction taken by the organization. So if I was to give you an example with respect to HR, I think one of the things that last year came out as an organizational requirement was to strengthen our entire area manager pool. So we are a retail organization. We believe in growing people internally. So 100% of our area managers are people who have grown from the stores. So they have grown from being a salesman to being a store manager to being an area manager. And we realized that this was while it is one of the most critical links between the front end and the back end, it was also one of the weakest links. And hence, it was a mandate that we need to do something around it. So, from an HR perspective, what we did do was to put a program together where we elevate the area managers. We also identify who are the good talent that we have with respect to area managers so that we can, certify them and use them as our role models for the rest of them. At the same time, look at some of our not so great area managers and see if we really need to look at hiring a few people from outside. So this was an entire program that we put together. We are just kind of, we are in the last phase of completing that program, which we should be able to do in the first quarter of the coming year. Right. So how we have been able to contribute to one of the biggest challenges that the organization had with respect to a business problem. Yeah. So I'm just giving you one example. There could be many more. Another example I can give you is typically, the cost to sales. One of the biggest expense, why do we always call HR as a cost center, is one of the biggest expenses that any organization has is on people. So rentals are one, and second is people. And when we talk about people, definitely there is HR plays a critical role in org design to org structures to, ensuring that the people we have are performing really well. So how HR works with the CEO of the company, the business head of the company, to align this entire piece, right? So this is how we can contribute
yeah,
with respect to the strategic direction of the organization. I would
Great.
like to keep talking about it, Pulkit, but we are short of time,
Yeah,
so let me just.
yeah. No, I can understand. We have enough questions to possibly cover all nuances, from a breadth perspective. It's okay. We can't, get into deeper details for each of the nuances. So, my second question for you now is that are there any specific HR metrics or KPIs that you believe have a direct impact on the overall business success?
There are many, but I could pick a few that has helped me work closely with the business. I think the first one is employee productivity.
Okay.
And this the way we typically calculate this is what is the employee's contribution to the sale. And the second way we look at it is what is the overall cost to sales of manpower. So these are two very big matrices that we kind of closely monitor and work with the business on. The third part of it would be in terms of talent. So how do we, we run this program called uh, we had named it typically high tenure, but not good performers, right? Been with us for a long time, but not really performing, or been with us for a short time, but performing very well. So, of course, there is a whole program that goes behind putting this whole piece together. And how do we ensure that our top talent is protected and retained? And how do we also ensure that the not so good talent, either we realign them to some other roles or we have conversations with them saying that they need to, shape up and having interventions around it. Right. So we have multiple programs around it. We've done a hypo program. We've done a high cost, high tenure, as we called it, right? Cost is high, tenure is high, but not really performing. So what do we do? There was a whole intervention around it that we had done. Then we have another important thing which we can talk about is the training ROI. While everyone says, it's very difficult to monitor ROI, I think what I always have believed in is take one or two programs in a year and drive it in such a way that there is a change in the way business is doing things around that area. So one of the things that I can talk about is uh, we had done this program called Meet, Greet, Direct, and again, my earlier organization, where the business had come back saying that they really don't see the staff selling to a customer, wishing the customer. So we had done this entire program around Meet, Greet, Direct, and we drove that for one entire year across all the stores, and it was so successful that I just got a blanket buy-in from all my regional managers saying, "Aapko training mein jo karna hai, do it," because we've seen
Mm.
success in this. So I think training ROI is not difficult to measure if you really want to. Top talent I spoke about, retention of top talent, and costs I've spoken about. So yeah, I think these are some of the matrices. While there are many more, but from
Yeah,
a business perspective, I think these would be some critical things you can monitor and measure.
awesome. Thank you for sharing those. Let's now talk about the connect between employee engagement uh, and overall business alignment, right? So my next question is, can you share examples of HR initiatives that have positively impacted employee engagement, which in turn supported organizational objectives? I'm very sure, a lot of HR leaders out there have employee experience as one of their uh, key result areas. So they would certainly benefit from what you have to share here.
So, like I mentioned earlier, HR has been a green field for me in both the organizations, my current organization, Metro Brands, as well as my earlier organization. And I think both organizations are very different. Both had very different needs, and I think I just worked on those needs and delivered. So I would like to give you uh, one big project that I worked on, which was very, very, very successful, and I spoke about it briefly, which was the
Sure.
entire front end career progression piece. So when I had taken over the role of HR in my earlier organization, attrition was extremely high. We used to do an engagement survey. Our engagement scores were extremely poor, and productivity was okay. Of course, productivity is directly proportionate to sales, but then it's a vicious circle. Sales comes through employees as well. While product is of course key, but then our product was never an issue. So this was a big challenge for me. How do I increase engagement? How do I reduce attrition? How do I improve productivity? So I had a lot of conversations with my stakeholders. I visited a lot of stores. I spoke to a lot of employees, spoke to managers, spoke to my regional heads, the ops head. And one of the biggest challenges we encountered was that there is so much of attrition that by the time we train someone, even before we complete training for one person, the person is gone. And my organization used to be a training ground for other retailers, and this was becoming a constant challenge. So when I spoke to people, I think one of the things that came out was there are people in the organization who have been working for many years in the same role. They have no sense of what is going to happen to their careers. Salary growth has been not great. And with this, when new people come in, there is a negative word that spreads across. So they don't want to work, they want to leave. So this came as one of the biggest challenges. So we put our heads together on what could be the solution. And we thought the best solution would be how do we create a career tree for all the employees, showing them a very clear path on where they can go from a sales staff to other roles. So, of course, one is a straight line, you become a sales staff, then a department manager, and there are layers, of course, in each of the roles. So sales staff to a senior sales staff to a assistant department manager to a department manager, assistant store manager, cluster manager, area manager. So that's the straight. And then how can you also move into, let's say, a planning role, let's say a visual merchandising role, let's say an HR role, a marketing role. So we had created this entire tree, and we had multiple assessments which we had done through a competency framework. So the way we had done it is we had a certain weightage on performance, a certain weightage on manager feedback, and a certain weightage on the competencies. So, and there was a cutoff score. And if people get that cutoff score, then they're ready to take up a higher role. So I think this worked so brilliantly and it engaged the organization.
To our audience and listeners, a sincere thank you for your continued support. We trust you enjoyed today's episode of the CHRO Mindset. Stay engaged for some awesome episodes coming up as we delve deeper into the realms of strategic HR and modern day workplaces. Until then, take good care of yourself and thank you.